Hello everyone, it's DuckFaden07. Today we are playing a Beanstalk deck, but this time it is a Miracles Control. So we are playing Terminus, usually a 6 mana board wipe that triggers up to Beanstalk on cast. That can be cast for 1 mana for its Miracle cost, and you just need to put it back on the top of your library with the Jace the Mind Sculptor, or set it up on top of your library with Preordain. Okay, so for a long time, players have tried this strategy in Modern, but up the Beanstalk, it's a really huge upgrade for this type of build, because you get to uh, get the value when you actually cast the Terminus. You get a huge value from just board wiping, and you're not destroying these creatures, you're putting them on the bottom, so undying spells doesn't work, anything doesn't work, and you still get to draw a card from not the Beanstalk, which is huge. Okay, so we also have Solitudes here, we also have Bindings that can trigger it, Lorien Revealed, and the Fairy Hero of the Minaria. Okay, so the Fairy Hero of the Minaria triggers the Beanstalk. It's a great draw engine. It's also a removal that can deal with opponent's ring, creatures, or problematic permanents. Definitely the Fairy can be a ring in this deck. You can also maybe trim Jace if you really want to play the rings, or you can probably trim one March. Stuff like that. There are definitely spots in this deck, cards that can be trimmed if necessary. But I kind of liked at least one Teferi in the main. It triggers the Beanstalk. It's a very cool card for a deck. It lets you deal with troubling permanents. You can put them on top of their library and still have the Teferi left on the field. Sure, it's worse now when the Bowmasters is printed, but there are some solutions to the Bowmasters. We have Prismatic Ending, we have March, we have Solitude, we have Leyland Binding, lots of solutions. Jace can also bounce the token and stuff like that. Okay, so on the sideboard we have Cohera, Subtlety, some additional counterspells, Chalice, Stony Silence, which hates on the One Ring, but also artifact decks like Hammer Time. And that's it. Okay, so let's go and check the gameplay of this deck. Actually, for this league I forgot to put Cohera in my deck, so I won't have access to Cohera. Instead, I had one Supreme Verdict on the side. Okay, turn 1. I have Lorien Revealed and Preordained. So since I'm definitely won't land, there is no point in casting the Preordained there, because I just want to find that land, so it makes more sense to go for the Lorien and just find the land I need. So I decide to immediately get rid of this Esper Sentinel and cast the Prismatic Ending. Opponent goes for Sigarda's Aid and the Gingerbread. I find the land, play the Beanstalk, and now I have a Solitude and 2 Leyland Bindings plus Counterspell, which is like really good in my situation at the moment. Opponent has the Hammer. They try to attach it to the Gingerbread. In response, I go for the Solitude, exile the Gingerbread, draw a card, and they can't equip the Hammer since they don't have the Metalcraft. So I'm able to go for Tutorial Land and cast the Leyland Binding before they have the protection spells or anything. So I decided to go for the Paladin and risk them having another Colossus Hammer, and my risk didn't pay off because my opponent had the Inkmoth Nexus immediately to kill me. So I had to settle this in the next 2 games. Okay, so I definitely had multiple options there. I had the opportunity to go for to go for binding on Sigarda's aid to be safer. Okay, so Beanstalk already is on the field. I have the Stony Silence, I have the Solitude. A pretty good hand. I reveal the Terminus from the top and cast the Terminus immediately, paying for Esper Sentinel tax cost, and putting both creatures on the bottom of their library. And also I got the second Terminus in my hand with the Beanstalk ability. And yeah, okay, so now my opponent passes the turn, saving mana to make constructs. I decide not to play the Beanstalk, but just save the mana for Dress Down. Opponent tries to create another construct. I decide to play the Dress Down in response, so in case they go for Springleaf Drum, they can't use it to get mana. Okay, so I get the landed there, play the Leyline Binding, get a draw, exile this Giver of Runes, play the Chalice of the Void on 1, prevent them from casting their hammers. Opponent has the Pure Steel Paladin, and they have the Stoneforge. They find Caldera. So I'm in no hurry to do anything. I play the second Beanstalk on my turn. I pitch cast the Solitude, draw 2 cards there. Exile the Stoneforge. Exile also the Pure Steel Paladin. I still have another March in my hand. I still have another Solitude in my hand if necessary. And the Binding, of course. And yeah, my opponent has another Paladin, but at this point they just don't have any chance. And I just had too much removals. March, Stony Silence, Binding, just huge amount of stuff that's good against them. So I definitely needed some time to finish the game here, find another Solitude to attack them, or Jace to Fate Seal them, but there is just not much they can do here. I was holding the counter spell, also like okay, so Misplay there didn't exile the Inkmot Nexus, but it just didn't matter at this point. I had too much stuff going on. Opponent, I mean, they had like minimum chances of trying to hard cast the Caldera from their hand, stuff like that. But it wasn't really realistic. They continue attacking with the Inkmot Nexus. I tried digging. That was this verdict I was talking about. I tried digging, trying to find another way to win this game sooner. I mean, the game lasted for a lot more turns, but it was the opponent was locked, so I think I can just go on and switch to the next game. I go for a giver here. I decided to Solitude this Giver of Runes immediately before they untap with the protection spell. Then it becomes a problem. Opponent goes for the Stoneforge. I could go for to exile Kandra with binding, but they could have like a protection spell or something. So I decided to go for this immediately. My opponent plays the Surge in response to Teferi, so I wasn't able to bounce their Sigarda's aid. An opponent had the Colossus Hammer, and fortunately they didn't have the second hammer. So they went to kill my Teferi, but I had a prismatic ending and the Stony Silence to prevent from equipping the hammer. Okay, so I should have casted actually this March immediately, but I did it end of their turn. So they cast the Reprieve, but I had mana to cast this again. So I do this, exile the Sigarda's Aid, and Sigarda's Aid at this point was like the card I cared about the most probably. I was able here to get the 5th mana and cast the Lorien Revealed, draw me 3 cards. Opponent finds the Urza Saga. And I find the Dress Down, which is really a nice immediate answer to their top deck. Opponent is still in the game this one. I have the Stony Silence on the field though, and the Dress Down and the Solitude, so pretty good hand. But still opponent finds 2 Urza Sagas, which can definitely be problematic. I cast my Solitude, exile one of their constructs. They find another Ornithopter. I'm not sure. I think my opponent thought there they can hardcast the Caldera, but they weren't able to do this this turn. So instead, they sacked the Silent Clearing, I think. And they tried to cast this Esper Sentinel. I counter that. They resolve the Pure Steel Paladin. Yeah, but all of this is not very relevant. They find another Sigarda's Aid. That actually was a card I cared about, and they were able to play the Shadow Spear and the second Paladin to get more cards on the field, and I was kind of low on time, so I had to find a way to win this fast. I now had Terminus, and I decided to resolve the Terminus kill order stuff and try to win with the Jace Fate Seal. I had Solitude in hand, which was pretty good. Opponent has the Inkpot Nexus. I decide to cast my Solitude to start attacking my opponent, and now I find the Chalice, which was very important here because it prevents my opponent from top decking the hammers. And I don't know why they made their Nexus a creature this way. I could just bounce the Nexus, which was a good thing for me. Now I also cast my second Beanstalk and continue Fate Sealing them with the Jace. That was my game plan here, and also just attacking with Solitude plus Fate Sealing with Jace. My two plans for winning this. Opponent plays the Hushbringer. I scry Counterspell on top of my library and just minusing the Jace, plussing the Teferi. Now I had the Counterspell to counter this Hushbringer. Chalice is on 1, so they can only play 2 mana spells at this point. They had the Stoneforge, finding another Colossus Hammer. So I needed to find a solution for the Stoneforge. I had a march on top of my library, 2 minutes for me until uh, to win this game, but I had plenty of time, good chances to succeed in doing this. I continue attacking with Solitude, putting my opponent on 7. My opponent was basically completely locked. I find another Solitude on top, which was very important, enabled me to win this game sooner. Unfortunately, I skipped through my attack phase here, but it was fine. I still had plenty of time for 2 Solitude attacks. So end of turn, I go for the second Solitude, draw me 2 cards there, and force them block with the Inkpot Nexus. Also play the Chalice on 2, so this means they can't play almost any spells from their deck. And yeah, that was the game. Okay, so we will go through the wins first and then watch the defeat in the end. Okay, so match 2, win 2. Starting first with a double beanstalk, that is pretty good. We already concluded that is good from yesterday's video. So when you start with the beanstalks, you usually have very strong hands. It was a Tron matchup, so I decided to not go for the beanstalk there, but instead play the march. Now I cast the beanstalk, finding the preordain, and I decided to put the counterspell in my hand. My opponent plays the Oblivion Stone, but they don't have the Tron assembled yet, and they need 5 mana to crack this. So it was fine. I just cast another beanstalk and almost have full domain. So this means I can go for Leyland Binding next turn and still have the counterspell. I was able to cast the Binding here. And I had another mana to to bounce the Oblivion Stone. This means if my opponent has to play the Oblivion Stone next turn and then don't have mana to crack it until the turn after that. So I was safe from them activating that one, but they find another another One Ring, so I had to deal with that. I had a double counterspell, so at this point I just didn't want to dig. I just saved the counterspell to counter the relevant spells. Okay, so both of these spells were relevant to there because Sylvan's Crying finding them full Tron, Oblivion Stone killing my whole board except their ring. So I had to counter both of those. Had 3 Beanstalks at this point, casting the Teferi and Teferi getting rid of the One Ring, which provides me with sufficient time to find a solution until they actually, oh sorry, they shuffled the ring from the top of their library with Urza Saga ability there. But yeah, even if they didn't, this provides me with enough time to find a solution for the ring when they play it again. So Teferi, pretty cool in this matchup. And with the 3 beanstalks, you basically have like infinite card draw. Okay, now I play the Jace, find the 2 counterspells from the top of my library, very happy with that. And now I can just continue countering the relevant stuff and playing Solitude as a beater, instant speed, or Fate Sealing with Jace, whatever. A Wormcoil I don't really care about. And I let this resolve and play the Solitude. End of turn, I have a small Teferi on the field, so They can play anything on my turn. Okay, so I exile the Wormcoil and just finally start Fate Sealing plus Solitude attacks, whatever comes first. I have only 19 cards in my library, so I have to be very careful about casting my spells. Opponent has the Dismember for the Solitude, so I have to change my plan towards Fate Sealing. So I'm not even using the Big Teferi at this point. Um, Fate Seal is actually like incredibly strong against decks like Tron. They don't get top decks all the time, but when they get the top deck, it's very good. And the Fate Seal just removes all the good cards from the top of their deck, and you just leave lands and irrelevant stuff. And it mostly works out pretty good. I had lots of mana, almost all lands from my deck on the field, counter spells in hand, a lot of removal to protect my Jace. I had to use the binding there to kill attacking constructs and just bounce the second one with the Teferi. So at this point I was on 14 cards in my library, so I have to be very careful about not decking. Endurance might be necessary in a lot of builds with the Beanstalk. You just get so much card advantage, and this deck doesn't have many win conditions except Solitude, Jace in the main. So sometimes it can be pretty hard to close the game. One off and treat the angels could help maybe, but I prefer having subtlety on the sideboard as additional threat. Also, this league I didn't report Kahira, so I didn't have access to Kahira, which is another beater that can be very helpful. Okay, so that is it. That was first game. Let's watch the second one. Uh, this is decent. I have the I mean, it's not that great hand against Tron, but kind of keepable because I have the Preordain, and Preordain finds me the Beanstalk. Opponent finds their missing Tron piece, which means they will have a turn 3 Tron assembled, which is definitely a problem. Opponent doesn't have anything relevant on this turn except Ballista. This is not a big problem for me. I know they have Ulamog in hand. They revealed it. So I decided to go for the Talisman to prevent them from playing the Ulamog next turn. And also just exile their creature. They find Urza Saga, probably meaning they have another Tronland in their hand to go for Ulamog next turn. I play the Chalice on 1 and pass the turn holding the counterspell for the expecting the Ulamog. So Ulamog has ability which triggers on cast, so I can't do anything about that. But I'm able to counter the Ulamog. And I had the Lorien in my hand to get me another land, so I was still in a game. Stony Silence was pretty decent to top deck actually, so I was able to get the Hollow Fountain with the Lorien, play my Stony Silence, and the Stony Silence prevents a lot of cards from their deck. So they can't use the Might, they can't use the Oblivion Stone, they can't use their land searching cards. Okay, so I played the Jace here, bounced the construct token, and their Might's Oblivion Stones are locked at this point. So they attack Jace. Sorry, they attack me, and they had the Boseiju to kill my Stony Silence and activate their Oblivion Stone, killing entire board. So I play another Jace and start plussing my Jace. They were on one card in hand, so it seemed like a good idea to start Fate Sealing them. As I said already, Fate Seal is pretty good against them. So I bounced the Erza Saga, which I left previously on top of their library because I had the fairy to bounce it for a turn until I find some solutions for it. Jace was already on 9 counters. I had Prismatic Ending and Lorien Reveal here to like protect myself. Also finding a march to kill the Erza Saga was great. Exactly the solution I was looking for. And now I had a Prismatic Ending to kill the Construct token to protect my Jace and also have the counterspell for their turn, plus the Fate Seal is a pretty impossible situation for the opponent. Okay, so I get another Jace ability, putting opponent on 13, bottoming the Ancient Stirrings, and passing the turn with a counterspell. Opponent doesn't find anything relevant, and that is the game. Okay, so that is the win 2. Let's check out the third win of this league. Okay, so there is the Beanstalk, a counterspell, Solitude, so removals, counters, a pretty good hand. Okay, I played against a Scam player here. They didn't have a Scam on turn 1, they had a Ragavan. I went for Solitude, exiling Ragavan, drawing me a card. Opponent has the Doughty. But this was fine. I was taking obviously damage from the Doughty, but I passed the turn holding the counterspell. Finding another basic in case they play Blood Moon. I decided to save the Lorien in my hand to actually hard cast it because I had plenty of lands. And now I cast the Jace, and the Jace is actually like pretty decent. In this match, bouncing their creatures, it can be very useful, like bouncing scammed creatures like Scam Fury, Scam Grief, or even just like Doughty to prevent Doughty from stealing my spells. I have the Lorien Reveal here, drawing me 4 cards. They got a lot of Bowmasters pings, making a 5/5 token, even a 6/6 token before I solitude it. So yeah, they had the Bowmasters on the field, which is unfortunate against the Beanstalk, but I had solutions for it, and I went for a second white land and hardcast the Terminus, taking another ping from the Bowmasters. Okay, so now I was in a pretty good situation. I resolved all the immediate threats, and now I was untapping with 7 mana, um, Solitude, Counterspell. Opponent tries to go for the Thoughtseize, and I play the Solitude in response, drawing me card from the Beanstalk. Opponent tries to kill their Terminate. To terminate their own creature after casting Not Dead After All, but I have the counterspell for that, and I exile their Kikijiki Reflection, and they concede the game with 0 cards in hand. Beanstalk active plus Solitude, it's too much, and that is it. So let's check out the second game. Okay, again, pretty decent hand. Double dress down, solitude, supreme verdict. Already repeating, again repeating. I have had a solid supreme verdict because I forgot on the sideboard because I forgot to include Kahira. Okay, so exiled two of their Ragavans already. Cast dress down so they don't get the Ragavan ability. My opponent cast the Totsis. I go for dress down in response so my spells don't get exiled there and counter the Totsis. This also enabled me not to disable them from getting the Ragavan trigger. And now I was untapped with the 5 lands. I was able to cast my Solitude, exile their Doughty, and trade with their third Ragavan, putting me on a very safe 14 life. And still I had solid binding in my hand to deal with their threats. Bouncing the Doughty and putting Jace on the field, finding me another Solitude was great. Opponent casts the Fable, but I have like too much stuff now. Drawing too much cards, too much value from the Jace brainstorms. They have a Sheldred, which would usually be pretty good, but I have multiple options to deal with it. Jace Bounce, Teferi, Solitude in hand, and yeah, okay. So that was it. My opponent concedes the game and they give up. Okay, so let's watch the last win of this league. I was playing second this time. I decided to mulligan that one. It was kind of keepable, but yeah, this hand was much better. Beanstalk on turn 2, followed with the Binding, and Solitude is always great. A top deck Terminus, but no point of casting it. Opponent plays Azusa. I decided to let them use their Azusa ability, not use my Solitude yet. They cast the One Ring, but it was okay. I exiled One Ring. I exiled the Azusa to prevent them from getting 6 mana. Sorry, even more mana. Now with Azusa gone, they had 5 at this point. And yeah, they cast another ring, but they had 0 lands on the field, which was good for me. I cast the fairy, bouncing the ring, which means they have to spend another turn to play the ring, and still they have a 0 lands in their hand. So at this point I realize like this ring is not doing much for them. Still next turn they will only have like 4 mana if they want to play the bounce land, so they really can't do it. So I decided I'm just going to dig for a counter spell and just continue with the card advantage and hold the counter spell for the Titan or whatever. My opponent has 10 cards at this point in their hand. They go for a Grazer, and I decide to counter the Grazer because this would give them a lot of mana. I go for another Brainstorm, finding another counter spell. Playing preordain, digging some more. Plussing my planeswalkers and passing the turn with the counter spell. Opponent now has the 6 mana to cast the Titan, but I have the counter spell. So next turn I had multiple options. I could just plus the Teferi and hold instant speed Terminus, which that wasn't ideal. So I decided to go for Preordain, bouncing one of their amulets with my Teferi and casting the big Teferi to put a second amulet third from the top, and the opponent concedes on my Teferi because it would slow them down hugely, them not being able to get the anything this turn, taking damage from the One Ring, and all of that. Opponent decides to concede. That was the game. Okay, let's check out the second one. I had to mulligan this one, obviously. I kept this, which is fine. Subtlety and Dress Down are great cards against Amulet Titan. So I start off with the Zagotrium and hoping to Beanstalk on turn 2. I had a counterspell at this point, but also had the Subtlety, so I decided it's fine to go for a Beanstalk. I can always just play the Subtlety if needed. Opponent only goes for Arboreal Grazer, ramping a bit. This was still fine. I was still very safe from Titan next turn. Opponent plays the amulet. I decide to counter. Multiple amulets are always dangerous in their deck, so I think it's best to just counter it. Opponent here makes a construct token, and then on their turn, trying to cast something. They go for another Titan, uncounterable, but I have my Subtlety. Of course, they put Titan on the top of their attack. But I had a good plan for the next turn. Just dress down the Titan until I find a solution. Now I was able to start attacking my opponent. I also killed the amulet. And this disabled my opponent from casting another Titan. They didn't have enough mana, so they go for a ring again. They go for a ring again, finding yeah, that was a good top deck for the opponent, that ring. I didn't have counter for it, but yeah, my opponent was able to cast the Titan here. I had the dress down to both kill the construct and disable the Primeval Titan. I've also cast the second dress down. Maybe I should have holded this one. I go for another white source and didn't have much options but to go for a terminus immediately. But unfortunately, opponent had the One Ring, which decided the game this time, and they had just too much stuff on their turn, and that was it. They find amulet plus the Titan. It was lethal. Yeah, that was the game. So let's check out the last one. Okay, so pretty slow hand without the beanstalk. Let's see how that went. Opponent tried to play like Tried to keep probably a slower hand, but that wasn't really a good idea. I was able to play the ferry here, bounce the Years the Saga, top deck the March, which uh, which is basically Stone Rain, 1 mana Stone Rain in this situation. Now I untap with the Jace, gets the Jace Brainstorm ability, and my opponent concedes. That was it. They obviously didn't have good stuff in their hand and decided that's enough. Okay, so that was the all the wins from this league. There is one loss left to see. Okay, this was a terrible match. I will just partially show the first one. The second game was exactly the same as the first one. My opponent played the mono red land destruction, and basically you saw how much lands I played in my deck. I played like huge number of basics. I play a lot of non-basics too. So my opponent succeeded to kill all of my lands except the basic islands in all the games, in both games, and it was really a terrible match. I was controlling them pretty good um, at the beginning, and I was able to like gem the Jays and plus the Jays before they burn it. I let them keep the demolition field on top. Maybe that wasn't a good idea. Now in retrospective, but I still had plenty of lands in hand. They used a double spell to get rid of my Jace. Unfortunately, that was pretty good for them. So just play another Hollow Fountain. They had another removal and another cleansing wildfire. Again, I still just play my hold my counter spell, counter their Fable, then untap, play another Teferi. I find another breeding pool to cast my second Beanstalk. Nothing great in the hand right now for this matchup. I mean, like Terminus is okay, but not that great. I really need like Planeswalkers and the creatures, stuff like that. I cast the Terminus instant speed, drawing me 2 cards with the fairy ability. So I go for the Lorien reveal here, drawing me 5 cards. Finally, I get the Solitude. I get a lot of stuff I needed. No counterspell, unfortunately. Uh, but all in all, very, very long and painful game to play. I play another Jace. Uh, try to Fate Seal them. I put a Season Spiral on the bottom of the library. I cast the Solitude to start attacking my opponent, but they have a removal for my Jace, unfortunately. I have the Beanstalk again, playing the Preordain and just digging, 20 cards left in my library at this point. I find Counterspell now, so I just plus the Teferi and tap 2 lands. Did I fail with the untap here? I think I did. Oh no, I didn't, sorry. Yeah, it wasn't end of turn yet. Okay, so I untap 2 lands, still holding that counterspell if needed. And yeah, now they got rid of my green source, so that was all the lands I had in my library. But it was really, really exhausting and exhausting game. Both matches. Second was even more exhausting because my opponent drew insane number of those destroy target land, draw a card type of cards. I think they like draw all of them, maybe, if that is possible. So problem was for me again a same problem. I'm on 17 cards in my library and I can't really uh, draw too many cards at this point, so even using Teferi is a bit risky, but it is still fine. I have a plan to kill my opponent before this thing happens. Okay, so I try to go to 8 counters with the fairy to try to ult it, but they have removal both for Solitude. I saw a Scry. Cool thing about March with Beanstalk, you can often just exile the card from your hand to make it mana value 5 to draw a card with the Beanstalk. That comes up pretty often actually. My opponent had the Fury to put my Teferi on 8, and I had too low cards in my library at this point, so I really, really, really needed to start doing some taking some winning lines there. But my opponent has the Unholy Heat for the Jace. They have the Mishra Research Desk doing me a lot of problems, and yeah, so that was definitely a problem. I find my another Solitude, so I can hopefully just gem it and finish off my opponent with that Solitude. But opponent had the Blast Zone too, and had the ability to put lot of counters on their okay, so 9 cards in my library now. Opponent destroying another land. Maybe I should have just casted Solitude at this point to start try to start attacking my opponent. Only had the 2 land types right now, so I wasn't able to cast the binding, and this was the defining moment. My opponent drawing another cleansing wildfire to kill my second white source, and now I wasn't even able to cast the Solitude anymore. So that was it. 6 cards in my library, no chance to cast the Solitude, so I concede the match. That was it. Okay, and the second one was like exactly the same as the first one. They even had more land destruction, and I again decked myself, and I don't have endurance on the sideboard. So that was it. Terminus is really card I love playing. I think deck is working very well. The Beanstalk is really huge upgrade for this build. Terminus is another very cool card that gets the Beanstalk triggers, and the Fairy Hero of Dominaria also is a good fit in this strategy, not just being card draw engine, but also getting rid of problematic permanents like the One Ring, of course, but in that Tron match, for example. Yeah, the Beanstalk is just so good. That is the conclusion. This card is actually insane. A lot of players were telling me like, why don't you play the ring there? I already talked about that in yesterday's video, and again today you could easily just probably fit the one ring here. There are definitely some cards you can cut, like maybe one of these, like one prismatic ending or one march. You can also probably cut one Teferi, even one Jace, or just a lot of stuff. So you can definitely play the ring if you want. Maybe not full four of them, maybe just two copies, three copies, but you know that the ring is better in multiples. But yeah, okay, so that's it. Thank you for watching. Hope you like the league. Friendly reminder to click like, click subscribe, comment in the video if you get, especially if you get the gameplay experience with this. I'm curious to see how it performed for you. And that's it. So I didn't have Kahira in this league. If I did have Kahira there, I would maybe be able to win that. Mono red match and to get the trophy. The trophy was really really close for the miracles. If I didn't forget to include the Kahira, I think realistically I would have very very higher chances of dealing with that mono red and getting the damage through, especially in the first match when they were on 8 life. Okay, but never mind, it happens, and I didn't get the trophy, but the deck performed very well. I'm pretty satisfied with it. And yeah, okay, so once again, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.